Hello, this is Gordon Hisayasu, and this is Chapter 5, Part 3 of Life. When I was younger, my younger brother and I used to always have these arguments about which is more important, my biology or his psychology, either life or the mind. And in a way, at that time, he kind of won because we were into other things like self actualization or transcendental meditation, I believe it's called. Some of the more or less hippie philosophies at that time. But my career is in the hospital lab medical sciences. So basically, I was really drawn back to life, and through the idea of how life functioned and things like diseases and accidents that are causing life-threatening things and even old age. So you really begin to appreciate life when you get into that medical type setting. And appreciation of life for me was the realization that life was a gift of God, and it was something that I should appreciate and realize. Even the idea of having an eternal life through belief in Jesus was part of that idea of looking at life in a kind of a different way, in kind of a different context, science and life and God. The idea of the how intricate and how well programmed everything is came to me a little bit when I was looking at this video about the James Webb telescope, which is going to replace the Hubble telescope. I believe it's going to supposedly be launched in the end of 2018. And it showed how it was launched, and it showed how it kind of opened up as a flower, opens up, and all of these functions that make it a viable telescope took place. And the realization of all of that great programming that had to go into that, and the intricate design of all of the different aspects of that telescope was just amazing. And it draws me back to the intricate design of life and the intricate design that God created in our life. When I was first studying, I used to always go to the UCLA Science Library. And the science library is set up so that on the very bottom floors, the older books existed. And I once crawled down to the bottom floor and I pulled out this old dusty book called The Cell. And at that time, they had a pretty good understanding about what was inside of a human cell. And it had all these, what they call organelles, and, these were things like our mitochondria and our ribosomes and the nucleus, of course. And it was basically the idea that this living cell was the place where the Krebs cycle, which gave us our energy, took place, and where the production of proteins and all these other functions of life was created, and of course reproduction in the nucleus of the cells. So it's pretty interesting to understand that. But our life isn't really about the DNA control of our cells. It's really basically about the idea that we have 37.2 trillion cells, and all of those things function together, all of those cells function together to make one living person. And that one living person aspect is what makes us so special. 37.2 trillion cells working together to make us alive. And again, I will mention that God is made us the only animal that he mentioned that we are in the image of God. And so I used to study from a biological point of view all about life from the ground up, from the cell, from reproduction to as it grew in the womb, and basically how it matured, and how it basically created all of these mechanisms that help us survive both mentally and physically. And what really occurred is in the laboratory, I saw all these specialties occurring. I found myself a part of many of them, endocrinology, hematology, cardiology, oncology, and, the very fascinating aspects of the investigative pathology also was a part of this. And it was really very interesting to me because I really understood how amazing the human body is. It is a basic work of art. And my head really got the spinning on how elaborate this was. And so I started to end up looking at things from a very high medical academic point of view. And again, this is where I was hit with questions. You know, in my career, I had a lot of questions. You know, one of them, because I worked with the HIV virus, was how does the HIV virus suppress the immune system, or how does it even reproduce? You know, why is it so hard to make vaccines for the HIV virus? And I studied how cocaine works to cause that euphoric feeling in the brain, and you know, opiates and other psychotropic or substance abuses. Even the psychotropic drugs, you know, how do they cause, or how do they help relate to schizophrenia and depressions? And so it was a big part of my career trying to figure out how all of these things took place. And it was pretty amazing to me because I got into later in my career some of this idea about how the cellular organic compounds signal things like heart disease or diabetes or even a lot of the cancers. So these became they started to be called markers. So I was looking for these markers for these certain specific relations to diseases. And so the biological systems became such intricate functions, and they were very hard to understand. And disease is just a part of that, and looking at it at the molecular level, I'll give a detail on one of those. I started studying the different techniques for doing what they call the HER2/neu protein. And the HER2/neu protein becomes very aggressive, and it's very major in certain types of breast cancer. And the thing that was so amazing about being able to do a test for the presence of abundance of HER2/neu protein was that if that person had that type of cancer that expressed HER2/neu, then there was a treatment. One of them was called herpescidin, but it's basically a monoclonal antibody. And this is the start of the so-called personal targeted treatments that, you know, medicine is starting to do now on the molecular level. So it's pretty amazing to me, you know. And so I got involved in this detail of how life really is and what life really is about through a lot of it medical science. And God said to us, he said that he created the heavens and the earth, and he created every living thing. And it was very interesting because God told Job once, he said, you know, you are God's critic, but do you have the answers? And finally, you know, one of the things that was pertinent to me was Jesus when he talked about salvation, but it's pertinent to life too. Because he said, humanly speaking, it is impossible, but with God, everything is possible with God. And basically, when you look at life, that is the reason that life is so important in my aspects of believing in God. I'm pretty excited about trying to do another video because I've been thinking about what to do. And so my next video will be a little bit more vague on topic, but I do want to go back and kind of reassess myself and who I am, maybe even get a little bit more personal than I have been in a way. So my next video will be chapter 6, and I think that it will be more of a personalized aspect of all of these things that I've been trying to talk about before I get into other topics. Thank you.